In 1932, the Russians manufactured a famine which killed, depending upon whose estimates you read, anywhere from 6 to 30 million Ukrainians. Now, they used some very specific tactics, and what's worrying me today is that I see those same tactics being introduced in the United States and around the world. What they did was they curbed or limited or reduced every form of food that you could possibly think of. They went after crops. If food was brought into Ukraine, they stopped trucks at the borderline. Look, we're looking at some photos here of the Holodomor. These are people starving to death. You can see these are photos of Ukrainians during the Holodomor. People were starving to death. So they would stop trucks at the border. This was during the time of Stalin. This is what Stalin did. And we're seeing these same tactics now, these Stalin tactics going on in the United States and around the world. He made it illegal to hunt. He made it illegal to even pick a weed. You couldn't see. Now, my wife is Ukrainian. My mother-in-law was a small girl during the Holodomor. And what was happening was the Russian police, if you just pulled so much as a weed, they would come with a cane and they would beat you with a cane. Eventually, so 5 of her brothers all starved to death. She survived by climbing up into trees and eating leaves. People were starving. I have seen dreams like this in recent years, 10 years ago, of a massive starvation in Eastern Europe. And we know that in Revelation, we see that the famine is one of the things that humanity will be forced to contend with. All kinds of people were dying from this starvation. It was manufactured. People basically, after months of seeing people just drop dead from starvation, they became basically inoculated to it. If they would walk by a photo and people wouldn't be fazed just to see a dead man because they had just been accustomed to it. So this Stalin, he was a master of manipulation, and there was a reason that they wanted to kill Ukrainians, and it wasn't genocide as many today say. It was for different reasons, not totally relevant to this video. In this video, I want to point out that it very much looks like, and we see warning signs of it, that the world Satanists are now plotting to conduct a more large-scale engineered famine. So look in China. Now, we know that they engineered this virus. You don't get in through natural means. The combination of bat, of coronavirus, combined with pig, combined with 4 genes from HIV. Viruses don't have viral mixing. They change by mutating. Mutations do not alter the number of genes so easily. So it's manufactured, and we know that. Now, but they blamed it on these markets, and what did they do? Well, they made it illegal to trade in wildlife. So what did that do? That closed down a lot of markets, and it reduced resources in terms of food supply. Even if you and I are turned off by eating bats and other types of strange wild animals, that nevertheless is a reduced spread of food. So here we see now in different places throughout the United States, they are closing docks so that you can't launch your boat, you can't go fishing. Again, less food is available. Now we see, this attack on the small family agribusiness has been going on for decades. They use different means to close down agribusinesses. Large, in Central California where I lived when I was in the States, large businesses, they would use the legal system. They would file any kind of a complaint about the land use, about where people had built, oh, this guy's 3 inches too close to the property line, he needs to move that. And these changes could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and potentially bankrupt a small family-owned farm. They try to pass laws, right? So they're always going after these small farms. And during this pandemic, a lot of these dairy farmers, a lot of their milk was sold to school programs and other state programs, so they had large contracts. So now a lot of milk is just being dumped. So these children, they're at home, they're eating something else. So food is lost out of the same system that we had last year. It means there's just less food going out into the world. There's less food entering the distribution chain. Here are more articles about dairymen being forced to, they're looking at bankruptcy. So they want to, every time a small business owner loses his business, it's usually a big ag that buys it up. Monsanto is one of the big players now in the dairy market. So here, now in this video right here, as soon as it loads, in India now, they have reintroduced caning, and they're doing this still in the Middle East, and what they're doing is they're just beating these men. Oh, he's out without a mask, so we need to beat him mercilessly. And this is going on in many different places now. Oh, they're leaving religious services, so let's cane them. So these are Muslims and Hindus. That's going on in India now. Now remember, what's happening right now is happening globally. The other thing that's going on, so in the Holodomor, when people began to starve, one of the first things they began to eat was pets. So if people wouldn't let their pet out because the pet would disappear. And a lot of pets were eaten during this time, because if you or I were faced with starving or eating the family dog, are you going to preserve the dog's life, or are you going to preserve your child's life, or the life of your wife, or your own life? Well, most people made the right choice, and they ate the dog, they ate the cat, or if they were forced, they stole the neighbor's dog and ate the neighbor's dog. All right? In the Bible, there were times when people were surrounded, Jerusalem was under siege, that people were eating their babies. And as sad as it is, it's a truth that in Ukraine, many people began to eat children. There are many horrible stories. You can find them easily on the internet. So what's happening now, well, remember, it's a potential source of food. However much you and I don't want to think about it, it's just a truth. It's a basic human truth that humans will fight severely to survive. Most humans will. So they will eat a dog. And the people who are planning these things, they understand that dogs and cats are food walking around. And if you have a dog or you have a cat, you also have a big bag of animal food, and a human can eat pet food and survive. So if people get rid of their pets, they don't have the pet, and they also don't have the pet food. So now I've read in different articles that they estimate that up to 1 million pets have been abandoned or given away. Food shelters, animal shelters are under financial stress because of all the pets they're taking in. And by the way, you can't really get it from you can't really get coronavirus from your pet. That is a deception. So yeah, Stalin, 1932, he started this famine and he kept it going. My mother-in-law, her uncle, he would go into the forest, him and some of his friends, and they would steal back from what they basically called mountains of food. The Russians, they would just stack the food. A truck would get stopped at the border. So now you're hearing about maybe some state checkpoints they want to set up. States are closing themselves off. And that was happening in the Holodomor times. The Russian soldiers, they had checkpoints on every road. They'd stop the food delivery trucks, empty out 2/3 of it, and so they were stealing this food. And when they were caught, they were all killed. They were just shot. Their bodies were left in the forest. So this is the kind of thing. They don't want people to get access to food. They're intentionally reducing the amount of food that's available, and they're even murdering people. So they passed laws saying that you couldn't harvest things from the wild. You couldn't do things. And so now, at one time, 29 states. This is in 2017. So this benefits, it says the subtitle here, Monsanto and DuPont, it's a big benefit to them, because what these states did was they just threw out laws that protected seeds. So the big corporations, they want to rule the world, and part of their world dominance plan is to control food production, food distribution, food storage, and even the retail markets. They want to control it all. Here's an article from the UN talking about food is being threatened now by a plague of locusts attacking Eastern Africa. Around this time, early April of 2020, those locusts are also now being seen in Russia. So now you have another threat on the food supply. Was that engineered or not? We don't know. Maybe it's God trying to let us understand what time we're in. I just want you to understand that these things were manufactured. I made a video not long ago. I talked about movies from 1940, 1980, a book from 1981, 1982, in which they basically showed, in this 1982 book, it showed they gave 4 cities where they were predicting where the next global pandemic would originate. And the book was written in 1982, and it said, it's going to be in 4 years. But the previous book said it would be in 40 years, which puts you right around 2021, 2022, basically now. And if you graph those 4 cities as 4 points and get 2 lines, it intersects at Wuhan. In other words, they exactly identified Wuhan. Wuhan was selected as the place to release a pandemic many years ago. You can find that video on my channel. It's called Wuhan Virus Secrets Revealed. You can go see that. Now, yeah, the Holodomor was a great tragedy, and it was engineered. They engineered the deaths of somewhere around 10 million people by starving them to death. They made laws that you couldn't get access to food. They enforced it brutally if people tried to break those laws. And we see the same kind of things happening now. And it's something that we all need to be praying against. We need to be aware of it. You need to prepare for it. And you need to understand the kind of a time that we are in when wickedness is ruling all over the world, controlling global events. Now, that book I mentioned, in which in 1982 they said, oh, well, this is where we're going to release that. The guy who gave the assignment to determine the location of the next pandemic, he made another comment. He said, well, it will be better to die from the plague than from the famine, which is a hint that they're also planning to release a famine along the same time. And again, that's why we're looking at what the world is doing. This is one of the things that just clues us in to what the world is doing right now. It's what the global Satanists are doing. Famine, plague. We see the wild animals are now coming into the cities as people are trapped inside. We see strange rumors of wars in the underground world. And even that stuff, people, that is part of another plot. And I'm going to make that for another video. I hope you will subscribe. I have a lot more understanding of what's going on, and I'm going to be making more videos in the future. I've been making 4 or 5 videos every week for the last 5-6 weeks, and I plan to put out a lot more. This is the man from Modesto reminding you, as always, to subscribe and pray or be defeated.